Heather Deal. She's a Vancouver City Councillor. I've known Heather for a while. Heather was one of the founders, pretty much who started the ball rolling in Vancouver for food trucks to happen on the city streets. They have been happening in other cities around North America previously, and Heather saw a need for this type of food service in Vancouver. Being on City Council, I guess it was a little easier to move things through, and pretty much that's how it all began. So Heather's been a City Councillor with Vancouver City since 2005. Carrying various different roles. She's on multiple committees. She's not only doing food trucks, she does everything under the sun. Very happy to have her tonight to talk about how it all started, where it's going. Please join me in welcoming Heather Deal.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming out tonight. As you've heard from the introduction, food trucks is a passion of mine, and pardon my cold if I start coughing, I'll just pause for a second. But I'd be happy to fill you in a little bit on the history of food trucks, how it's changed over recent years, why it's changed, and where we're going from here. So previous to a few years ago, the things that were allowed on the streets were started in the 1970s. And there was only one actual expansion from the 1970s until 2010, and that happened around Expo. And what was allowed were roasted chestnuts, popcorn, hot dogs, or pre-packaged foods such as ice cream bars. And everyone thought that was because there were health restrictions. I'll tell you more about that later. But back in 2008, I was reading the New York Times Magazine. I love Sunday New York Times. I was reading the New York Times Magazine, and they had an article about food trucks and about green carts in particular, and how bringing nutritious food to the streets was really important. And I thought, that's a really good idea. Maybe that's something we can do here. And then I thought, why do we have such crappy food trucks? They're good hot dogs. Why do we have such a bad selection of food on our food trucks? What is the reason for that? We have some of the top chefs in the country here. We have some of the most amazing multicultural, multinational food here. And we live at the business end of the Fraser Valley, which is one of the most productive places in North America. And we also have the fish and everything else that we have in the area. So why is it so bad? So I started looking into it, and I wrote a motion in that year, 2008, saying it's time to change this. It's time to expand the program and look into making it not only expanded in terms of types of food, in types of reflecting the city, also making sure it's as local, healthy, and organic, etc. as possible, and spreading it out throughout the city, not just downtown. Fast forward 2 years, things don't happen fast in bureaucracies. A little thing called an election and another little thing called the Olympics happened in between. We were pretty busy. But come 2010, we got down to it. There were 17 spaces that were currently licensed locations for hot dog carts that were not filled. So we said, let's take those 17 empty spots where we know the sidewalk is wide enough to accommodate a cart and there's good pedestrian traffic, and let's throw it out there and say, bring us your suggestions for something different. Well, imagine our staff's surprise when, at the end of a couple of months, they got in over 400 applicants with over 800 applications for those 17 spots. They were a little gobsmacked. They weren't quite sure what to do with all of these numbers and all of these applications. So they did the usual thing and did a lottery. How do we choose them? We've always chosen them through lottery because, frankly, it was one hot dog versus another hot dog, one chestnut versus another chestnut. Lottery seems like a reasonable way to make those differences. Well, people cotton out of that. How can you possibly expect a good selection? How can you possibly expect good diversity? The fear-mongering, this is going to be awful. And we ended up with 17 amazing vendors, many of whom are still out there, and some that didn't do as well. But we learned a lot. The next year we made the program permanent. We changed a few things about it. We brought in a judging panel, people from the food industry who were able to assess things like their food safe requirements, their business plan. Did they have a unit ready? Those trucks are expensive to make. Did they have a commissary where they could make their food in a healthy way that would pass Vancouver health regulations? Were they kind of unique and fun and sustainable, and did they have a waste management plan? And again, the food, the most important thing. And we got public input. We did quite a work with the public. There's a lot of work that went on at this time with the staff as well. The food program had always been run through the engineering department, and I love engineers. I'm a biologist, but engineers are great. They're really good with numbers and straight lines and certainty. So they knew exactly where the sidewalk was big enough for a food cart. They didn't know much about food, and they didn't know much about the culture of food. So we started bringing in people from our food policy sector, and we found somebody in engineering who just fell in love with this program. And if any of you have ever dealt with Alan Rocket, he's an engineer who loves the food cart program and has done so much to support it, as many other people on our staff team have done. But he embraced it and took it on as his baby. And all of a sudden we had people in engineering, people in food services, or food policy and people throughout City Hall working on this new program. So that year we got about 100 applications in. We let 19 of them out. And then we got along to 2012, and we needed one more piece of information we hadn't had in the past, and that was the judging panel, the taste test. We'd not done the taste test the year before, we didn't have the capacity, but that seemed to be very important for the following year. So in 2012, we ended up with 12 new carts. There were 59 applications. People were getting much more sensible about applying. They were now learning the challenges, they were learning the cost, they were learning the process, and we had much more reasonable numbers to work with. And of those 59 applications, 25 of them went to the taste test. And the taste test was a hilarious day. Richard, that's the day I think I first actually met you, hovering around the outside, asking us how it was. I think you got a few leftover bits from a few of us during the day. But I was on the taste test panel along with people from food services, hospitality, media, business associations, the general public, and then me as the representative from council. And it sounds great. People kept saying to me, what a great job to have. Until you actually realize you're tasting 25 different morsels of food, but 25 morsels of food is a lot of food. And we were all tweeting during it. And about number 12, number 13, number 14, Charles Gauthier from the DVBIA and I started saying, Robert Clark, the chef, started saying, uh-oh, we're only halfway through and someone bring me my bucket. You know, it's like it was pretty rich, and but it was wonderful food. And I have to tell you, the very final one, the order was chosen by random pit draw. The final cart to do the food test that day brought out their creation, and they gave it to us a very small sandwich. We were like this by this time. Very small sandwich. They said, well, here we have a sandwich. It's made on bread that's cooked with bacon fat. And on it we have baconaise and a touch of bacon salt. And on top of that we have some bacon. And some sausage stuffed with bacon. So we looked at this bill kind of going, oh dear. But to their credit, Pig on the Street did very, very well, despite the fact that we were so full we could barely look at food by that time. And they have a card out by the art gallery. You've probably seen lineups at many, many times. But all those new carts were downtown. We then decided this year we're going to start trying to push them out of the downtown core, and we're looking at the pod style. You may have heard of this as the Portland style food carts, because in Portland they have a lot of surface parking lots that are in neighborhoods that don't have a lot going on, so they pack these food carts in there and they become destination hubs. We don't have a lot of surface parking lots in neighborhoods without a lot of traffic in Vancouver. We're a much more compact city, and in the downtown core we have very few surface parking lots left, and they won't be there for long because those are building sites and the parking will go underground. And we are using less and less parking, to be frank. So we're looking for locations right now. The application's closed at the end of March. We're looking for people to work together and create pods, and we're looking for the spaces for them to go. So hopefully in May you'll start seeing those announcements. We'll probably have another taste testing, I'm hoping, and I'll make sure I fast for at least a month beforehand for the next one. But, and then we're going to do 15 each in the next several years as well. We've planned this program. We're doing it with a sort of a measured rollout so that we can see how it's going each time. Because there's also the side of the business that it's a very challenging business to have a food cart. You'll hear that from some of your vendors today. The margins aren't big. The business is a challenging one. And we don't want to saturate the market and make it very difficult for the ones that we've approved of to make a living. We also have 20 mobile carts. And 10 other carts that still service the traditional sort of ice cream and so forth. The Park Board has gotten into the business. They've got 3 of them in some of their busiest parks now. And there's now a Vancouver Street Food Society that's been formed. So we now have an organization of street food vendors that helps us inform what we do as a business. And we're learning every year. Every year it gets better. We're learning about the challenges that they have, and we're learning about the things that we need to tweak in terms of policy. Some of the carts are now actually opening bricks and mortar. We've seen that with Dog, for instance. And we've got restaurants opening carts. So this whole dialogue about restaurants and carts, a lot of the people who run very good restaurants, Vij, for instance, have decided that this diversifies their market. They get 2 different markets. They get the people who stop by a cart for food to go, and they get the people who come and sit down in a restaurant, want a glass of wine, perhaps even a roof or a washroom, for instance. So we're very, very pleased with the program. I'll let the vendors talk about the fees and so forth, but the other thing that's happened is that the media has really cottoned on to this. For some reason, because we did it fairly quickly and fairly publicly, there was a lot of public dialogue around this, we have had huge media attention. This is the gift, for a politician, it's like Christmas. This is the gift that keeps on giving. And in fact, one of my favorite things that happened to me was that in 2011 I got a phone call with a New York area code. And I said, well, you know, yes, Heather Deal here. And they said, hi, this is so-and-so calling from the New York Times Magazine. It's like, what? Big balloon, WTF, what? And she was calling about our food cart program. They'd heard about it, and they were writing about it, and they were really interested in the aspect of us trying to support as much organic, local, sustainable type food as possible, and whether or not that was the nanny state or in fact resulted in the great food that we know we have. And she interviewed me, and she said at one point, how did you get this idea? And I said, from you, 3 years ago, and it was really fun. That was really fun. And I'll say another thing that just happened last month and quite took me by surprise, is that my very first list was named one of the 20 most influential people in the province by BC Business Magazine for starting the food park program. That's how important it is. It's a relatively small file on my desk, but it's the one that is just so much fun, and people love it so much, and people love to talk about food. We're such a city of foodies that it's just a gift that keeps on giving. That's been really fun. So as I close up, is that my 10-minute warning? As I close up, I'm going to give you a 1-minute read of the types of food, because everyone says what type of food, so I'm going to see this as fast as possible. And these are just the ones off the list that we currently have. Mexican, Vietnamese, Persian, Indian, Greek, dim sum, local meats and fish, seafood, comfort food, El Salvadorian, Ukrainian, grilled meats, Filipino, West Coast, barbecue, Chinese, Middle Eastern, Japanese, donuts, shawarma, grilled cheese, pizza, crepes, bubble tea, juice and smoothies, British, pulled pork, Thai, Asian fusion, tacos, vegetarian, vegan, mac and cheese, Caribbean, kebabs, French, and we still have 38 hot dog stands. Thank you.